if you want to start playing jazz on the clarinet or the saxophone, one thing to get going with is to tongue the offbeats, and I mean the ands in this case. So 1 and 2 and 3 and. So on those ands, that's where you're going to tongue. Okay? And you want to use those tonguings mostly to put a little ping on the beginning of those and notes, not to separate. So don't clip any of the notes off. Don't go like this. So not like that. Let every note have its full length of legato kind of playing. Sustain, but just tongue the ands, the beginning of them. So in real time, you can do that to where it's exaggerated. Or you can make it almost sound like you're slurring, but that'll just help you keep your time flow better. And as you can hear on some of those, I swung more than not. As I mentioned in the long-winded version of this video, it's kind of not defined or agreed upon, at least, how swung eighth note should be for jazz. But definitely, tonguing the offbeats is a good idea. Really, really get used to that, to where you can play any of the stuff you'd normally play with that kind of default autopilot, automatic articulation. After you get used to it, and I'm talking like a month later or something, then you can start tonguing more and less when you want to. Really get used to that articulation. Now, if you want to, you can also use this articulation for other rhythmic gears, but in this case, you would be thinking of it as tonguing the even units of whatever it is. Like every other note. Not so much always the ands, obviously. Okay, and also, if you want to tongue the offbeats but be accenting the downbeats, one thing you can do is tongue the offbeats with a ghost tongue. So that would sound like this. That part where the tone was a little muffled and weird sounding, like a n sound, like the letter N, as in nag. That can be a way to muffle notes. So now I can tongue the offbeats but not accent them. Now, sometimes using the ghost tongue starts to take the grace away from the clarinet, as you just heard. But that's sometimes okay. Jazz doesn't necessarily have the same aesthetic as classical for every note being uniform and all that. In jazz, you decide how much. I tend to like most notes being uniform in sound, color, and stuff. Maybe too much sometimes. But in that case, I didn't. The other thing you can do, of course, as in classical, is work on your sense of legato. And maybe you could get to where your fingers play the time for you sometimes. This can smooth out the approach a little bit. So now I'll just learn a little bit. What's cool about slurring is you have more freedom almost, where your tongue isn't tying you down to certain things. But when you're first starting out, it's almost good that your tongue is tying you down to playing eighth notes with good offbeats. That's just something you have to get used to. You can also tongue more often. For example, this. So, tongue the offbeats, ghost tongue the offbeats, slur, tongue every note sometimes, and then try to mix it together a little bit. Another approach in jazz that you can try is to have groups of 2 and 3 in there sometimes. The other thing you can do is try to make the high notes pop, and this is like the exact opposite of classical aesthetics for the clarinet. And something that I'm kind of automatically doing is you kind of want to put vibratos in there, some bent notes. If you're going to do glisses and vibratos, they need to be more subtle for modern jazz, not like Rhapsody in Blue. So I'll just throw in a few more, maybe a bit more than what I've been doing. Here it goes. Now, those are the things to work on if you want to have good articulation in jazz. Obviously, you want to practice with metronome. Do slow tempos, fast tempos, grooves that aren't swung as well. Check those out a little bit more. The subdivisions you use, how far on top or behind the beat you play, those things all give you the feel that you have. Another thing is to try to put the shape dynamics in there. Sometimes it's hard to remember to do this in jazz because, especially for clarinet, you sometimes just have to belt out volume. So I'll do a little bit of that right now. So I could have done more of it, but there you go. It's always a work in progress.